Good evening, everybody.
Hello.
Oh, come on. Good evening, everybody. Thank you. Thank you. Hello, my name is Terry. I am one of the priests at St. Paul's Episcopal Church. I want to introduce some folk. We have Vicki Wiesen over there, who's one of the priests. Say hi, Vicki, everybody.
Hi.
And then that's Rilla Barrett, one of the priests there as well. Say hi, Rilla. And then we have Deacon Dennis sitting right here. Say hi, Dennis. Thank you. Okay, now that we're all one big happy family. Again, my name is Terry, and I'm just thankful that all of you came out on this beautiful night to have some conversation about how the heart of the Christian faith calls us to welcome and affirm everyone, including gay and lesbian people. And St. Paul's is doing a couple of these a year, one in February and one in October, and we're just picking different topics that are important to us and that we feel essentially never get covered by the larger sort of conversation that takes place in our media. And so the one we chose for this fall was this discussion. And the only kind of thing we want to talk about at first is just that we want this conversation tonight to be real respectful of other people. So if someone is here who disagrees with our position, we want you to know that we respect you about that. And after we're done with the presentation component, we're going to go out and have some more coffee and cookies, and there'll be some time for people to have conversation with each other out there. And then at about 15 minutes after the end of the presentation, I will come back in here if you want to have some conversation with me, kind of as a group. But that'll be totally up to you and kind of how you feel about it. So I wanted to tell you that we're all here tonight to talk about homosexuality. And because you got to love Homer in his underwear and with his little pink donut right there. And we were initially going to build the entire thing based on homosexuality, and we had this whole ad campaign basically designed, but News Corp said we couldn't use the image, which of course is normal. We sort of expected that. But it was really fun to be playful about it, because one of the problems with this discussion is that it's just so deadly serious. And so we want to use a little bit of humor now and again tonight when we can. Human sexuality is a part of a good and very good creation. Bodies and biological processes are good. That is at the heart of the Jewish and Christian understanding of creation. Now, we sometimes have different kinds of experiences with our bodies and with biological processes. Sometimes we really wrestle with that. I don't know about you, but when I was about 11 to 12 years old, I woke up one morning slightly early and fairly disturbed because I had had a dream. It was a dream about one of the girls in my class. And it was a dream about some pieces and parts that I didn't quite have figured out, and some of my interaction with those pieces and parts. And I will tell you that I did not, the night before, have the angel Gabriel come to me and say, Terry, you need to make a moral choice. That didn't happen. It just sort of happened the way it happened, and I was very confused about it. And I just did not understand at all what was going on. Although some of the other boys in my school seemed to understand what was going on somewhat well. This is a very deep part of us here. And therefore it deserves to be treated carefully. Sexuality reminds us, whether we are conscious of it or not, of our mortality. That of the question I asked my parents when I was about 6 years old as I was looking at their wedding pictures. I said, Mom and Dad, where am I in the why didn't you take a picture of me? Well, they said, well, Terry, they kind of laughed, you weren't here yet. But human sexuality is how, we have gotten here as biological beings, and how we produce children. So it is a very powerful thing we're talking about tonight that generates many powerful feelings. And we feel generally as a tradition that it's best expressed in loving, committed, socially supported relationship. And it deserves to be treated with deep respect, both in the way we use it and in the way we talk to one another about it. And of course, one of the biggest problems we have in this conversation is that people don't always treat each other very well in this conversation. I was downtown Mount Vernon. I was putting up some posters in coffee shops a few weeks ago. And there was a store that was closed, and a woman was getting ready to go into that store once they opened. And so I said to her, would you be willing to ask them to put up one of these posters for me? And she says, oh, sure. And then she saw that on the poster there was a cross, and that it had the word Christian in it, and she literally almost dropped the paper because she'd had such painful relationships, she told me, with a lot of fundamentalist Christians who had basically, and I said, oh honey, I'm so sorry, it sounds like you have religious stress disorder. And so we were able to laugh about that a little bit. And so I explained to her, I actually had to read the title to her. I said, why don't you just look at the title? She says, oh, I can't. I said, well, let me read it to you. How the heart of the Christian faith calls us to welcome and affirm gay and lesbian people. That's what you said? You're a pastor of a church? She couldn't believe it. So it's not just that people disagree about the issue, it's the way we treat one another in that disagreement that is such the problem. Okay? And tonight I'm going to try to be gentle and clear about those who differ from me. The biggest issue in the church around homosexuality is how we understand the authority of the Scripture. How we understand that. And I'm going to talk a little bit later at the very end about why that's such a big deal right now. But that is the issue in the church. But in my view, which is not necessarily right, but it's just my view, and I believe the view of our faith community generally, is that both fundamentalists and those frustrated by the Bible make the same mistake because they see it as a collection of logical statements expressing timeless truths. And so, you play the old game, you open up the Bible, and you close your eyes and you put your finger down, and that's going to be the answer to your question that you have. And of course it turns out to be something crazy like, Balaam was walking down the pathway and his donkey turned back and said something to him. It doesn't make any sense at all. The Bible is not just a series of logical statements expressing timeless truths. Our perspective about it is that the Scripture is a record of God-inspired leadership addressed to a particular culture at a particular time. And when we read it together, we believe that Christ continues to lead. Christ encounters us. But you got to remember the culture bit. Because if you read a gospel text, or any text in the Scripture, and you read it outside of understanding its context, you're bound to really misunderstand some things. And here's a really major one from Genesis chapter 12. It reads, "Now the Lord said to Abram, go from your country and your kindred and your father's house to the land that I will show you. I will make of you a great nation, and I will bless you and make your name great, so that you will be a blessing." And if the text stopped right there, we would all say, wow, that's fantastic. Because in an era where every nation and every tribe had their own God, in which conflicts between tribes and nations were not just conflicts between the tribes and nations, but conflicts between the gods themselves. Here we have a religious thought come into being, which is that there isn't a God for each competing nation and the gods are at war with each other, that there is one God for all nations, and so therefore, are we really different tribes? Are we really different people? And the answer is no. We're all children of the same. And so therefore, we really aren't different at all. But then we get to this next verse, which I've underlined here for you. "I will bless those who bless you, and the one who curses you I will curse." And then we begin to get these deep feelings of either resentment or anger or grief or shame in us. Because our imagination is that the Old Testament God, or the God that we hear about most of the time on TV and radio, is a God who really is kind of out to get you and just loves cursing people. I mean, God just, it's kind of a hobby for God. Or maybe it's God's primary job. It just kind of depends on who you listen to and how much money you send in by check or money order, or MasterCard and Visa. But this